Welcome Strategy Battle Gamers to another GBHL YouTube video. You're here with your host, roving reporter Damien O'Byrne, and it's just me. Yep, today you are joined by just me. As you may have heard, James opened a gym. That's congrats there, it seems to be going really well, and he's mega busy with that. Jamie is obviously equally busy working as he does in the kind of leisure industry for Lego and the summer holidays, so he's rammed. So the guys are having a bit of a tough time, I think, meeting up to get enough content out, and I put forward an idea I had for a video. Incidentally, mentioning Lego, I've also been deeply excited of late, having found the Dol Guldur sets on sale, which is pretty awesome. Beorn and Azog minifigures, they're hella cool. So if you guys are living in the UK and you're near an Entertainer toy shop, get down there. They're 30% off all their Hobbit Lego. Free bargains, who knew? So yeah, you're going to be with me for the next, I don't know really, half hour or so, depends how long we're gonna be here. And we are going to be looking at the trailer for the Battle of the Five Armies. Oh yes, as you may have heard, there's a trailer out. I think most of the people watching this will probably have seen it a whole bunch of times, and I'm certainly one of those people. I think it's fair to say I'm a fairly massive nerd for all things film related specifically. So I keep massively up to date on every little tidbit of information that I can find about the movies. I know a lot of people don't like watching the trailers and seeing all the previews because it kind of ruins the suspense and surprise for them, but I'm not like that at all. I want to eat up every tiny piece of information I possibly can. So I've devoured the trailer a whole bunch of times, and we figured, I was chatting to the guys, one thing that might be nice for the channel is to have a bit of a trailer breakdown and talk away through it and discuss all the various theories there are out there. So that's what we're going to be doing. So obviously get comfy, maybe get yourself some painting done. What I'm going to be doing here is working through the trailer, and I'm going to flash up every a still image of every shot, so you can actually have a look as we kind of discuss what might be going on in it. But you know, get your paints out, get painting, and maybe flick up at the screen every now and again when I'm talking about a particular shot, so you can see the sort of thing that's going on in it. And then I'd like to hear what you think afterwards about whether I'm completely off the boil. Obviously, it goes without saying, these are just my opinions. I don't know anything. I have no knowledge about what's going to happen in the film beyond what I've managed to glean from the various production diaries and interviews and all that sort of thing. Also, it will of course contain spoilers about definitely the Hobbit book and maybe the third Hobbit film. So if you don't know what happens after Smaug leaves the mountain, probably turn off, I reckon. Okay? Assuming you are alright with that, why don't we get stuck in? So, first things first, I haven't actually screen grabbed this, but all the intro stuff, the WB stuff, is all new. It's a kind of slightly different visual look with the kind of gold and the blue smoke. We haven't seen that before. Certainly not on a Hobbit or Lord of the Rings trailer. I don't know if maybe it's changed for other Warner Brothers things, but it looks quite Hobbity. It looks quite in keeping with the colour palette of the third film. So that's quite cool. I remember when the Lord of the Rings trailers came out, I used to get very excited when the New Line logo came on and it had smoke in the background. That was always how you knew you were going to get a Lord of the Rings trailer instead of a different New Line film trailer. So that's quite cool to see them doing that sort of thing again. So after all the new titles, we get to a shot of Bilbo sitting thinking, and of course this is accompanied by the first line of the trailer where Bilbo says, one day I'll remember everything that happened, the good, the bad, those who survived and those who did not. So that's quite a powerful line immediately. You'd have to think that that line is going to happen, that's got to be near the end of the film, I guess. He's got to be, it's an interesting thing to say, one day I'll remember, because that kind of implies he doesn't remember now and he'll remember more in time, which is a strange sort of concept. But it's obviously very ominous, it's very foreboding, those who lived, those who died. We know, I'm not one of those people in the camp that there's been a lot of stupid rumours that Sauron isn't going to die. He's going to die. Thorin will die, Fili will die, Kili will die, just like normal. The question of course is who else might die. Tauriel's a pretty strong contender on there. But it is interesting to think when he might be saying this, or who he might be saying it to. I did hear one theory suggest that perhaps the battle will be told in flashback, because of course in the book Bilbo does get knocked out in the battle. Now, my gut feeling is they're not going to do that. That it'll be sort of changed similarly the way that Pippin won't get knocked out, didn't get knocked out at the end of Return of the King. That I think he will be awake for the whole battle, and I think he will have a major part to play on it. But possibly, if he has been knocked out by a stone, he's then saying one day, I'll remember all that happened. Don't know. That could have some legs in it, I suppose. But, as I said, visually, that's initially accompanied by a shot of Bilbo sitting in Erebor. Been a bit of discussion about this already, about when this would take place. You can tell it's Erebor, I think, from the greeny, bluey rocks that you've got. Also, there's been a lot of discussion about the thing that's in the background. It looks like a kind of, there's a table perhaps with some white light on it. I've heard people say it looks like a bit like a meal's been eaten, and I've also heard people say it looks like a bit of a bed. So again, there's maybe some suggestions that this is after Thorin's death. For me, I don't think it is. I think it's just a table, probably. Thorin dies in a tent. You know, they could obviously change that, but he dies on the field of the battle. He doesn't die in Erebor, so I'd be surprised if Bilbo was then back in Erebor for his death. I think this, given that he's dressed very similarly to how he is in Desolation of Smaug, I reckon this is Bilbo just sitting debating what to do about the Arkenstone, probably just before he decides to go and give the Arkenstone to Thranduil and Bard. Who knows though, that would certainly be my money on that shot. So after that we get a close-up of Bilbo's head, which is, you know, Bilbo's head. There's only so much you can say about this. Again, it looks like he's in Erebor. It does look kind of like he's talking to Thorin, I think, from the shoulder that's going over him, but I'm not entirely sure of the context of that. But yeah, we get some nice shots of Bilbo. It's good. I think there's been a lot of chatter about maybe Bilbo being pushed to the background in some of these films, which I don't particularly agree with. But I think it's good that from the first teaser for the first film, the first teaser for the third film really puts Bilbo right at the front and begins with him talking, and begins with some shots of him, just to remind you that this is about the Hobbit. So after that we get our first shot of Tauriel, and this is interesting when you bear in mind that Bilbo's commentary is still going over the top of this, those who survived and those who died. Tauriel, I'm a big fan of Tauriel. Like her a lot. I think Evangeline Lilly was really good in the films. I think her character was really great. But a lot of people think she's going to die. Why? Because she's not in Lord of the Rings, so you can kill her, which makes sense. And I think, yeah, she probably will die. But you know, I don't know, not necessarily. But I think it could. A lot of people have been talking about the progression for Legolas, saying, you know, when's he going to become the kind of kind, considerate elf he is in Lord of the Rings? But you know, he hates Gimli at the start. Even in the films, you know, he's not happy about Gimli coming along. You remember that bit where Gimli goes, "And my axe," and Legolas goes, like that. Yeah, so he's not a fan of dwarfs at the start. So I think possibly if Tauriel is going to die, maybe it will be in some way that knocks him off somewhat. That, you know, he blames the dwarfs for it, hence, and it actually develops the enmity he had. But here we see Tauriel, and we see the first shot of what is potentially going to be the battle. It's set in Dale. It's the ruins of Dale covered in snow, and we see lots of shots from this kind of sequence, however big it is, throughout the trailer. And in the background we've also got a lot of guys jostling around. Now, they look like men to me. We'll talk a bit more about the Mannish army later on, but they look to me to be the kind of refugees of Lake-town and the Mannish army that Bard has helped put together, and they're kind of jostling around, probably fight. You can see there's some bodies in the background already, so they're probably fighting. This is probably part of the battle, and Tauriel is looking apprehensive. But I'm pretty sure this is there to kind of play with audience expectations, given the who will live and who will die kind of argument. But yeah, good to see Tauriel. Next up we have a great shot, which is really hard to make a lot out of, which is Gandalf riding into Dale on horseback. Now, I say it's hard to make a lot out because I've tried to pause it, and you'll see in the shot I give you, there's a lot going on, and it seems to be an army preparing for battle, and there seems to be carriages that kind of look almost like, they're obviously not going to be cannons, but they almost look like kind of rocket or ballista kind of encampments, which could be quite cool if there's some sort of you know, moving crossbow thing. But importantly, it's Gandalf arriving on horse. Now, again, as always, this is speculative, but this looks to me to be Gandalf rejoining the main storyline after everything that goes down at Dol Guldur. He's on a horse, which means he's travelled a fairly long way. When we see him in the battle later, he's on foot. So this to me looks like he's just arrived, and he's going to be rocking up to Dale. So what's interesting about this in terms of the book development is that you see Gandalf arriving to the Manish army, and of course the first time we see Gandalf in the book again is when Bilbo goes to give the Arkenstone to Thranduil and Bard, and then Gandalf reveals himself to Bilbo there. So clearly, assuming this is that part of the film, of course, we will see him ride from Dol Guldur and join the Manish camp, presumably to aid them somehow, help. But it does look to me like there's a kind of army preparing for war here. So whether that's preparing for the Battle of 5 Armies or whether it's preparing to besiege the mountain, who knows. But it's a pretty cool shot, and it shows that we're getting a lot of there's still going to be a lot of set heavy stuff, which is really great. You know, I think a lot of people worried about the CGI content, but the Dale set was huge. They made a big deal about what a massive set they'd made, which seemed to be a strange decision based on the fact that Dale was in it so little. But it is good to know that I think there'll be a huge proportion of this battle taking place in and around Dale. There's also, which is quite cool, I reckon going to be a Dale sequence in the extended version of the Desolation of Smaug. If you look in the Chronicles book, the dwarf company go through Dale on the way to the mountain. I think it's mainly to remind the viewer of the geography of the place. So they go to the overlook and they look over Dale, and in the Chronicles book it certainly implies that they are due to walk through that on their way there and kind of make that journey slightly longer. So I wouldn't be surprised if come November in the extended edition we get a kind of Dale sequence there as well, which would be quite cool. So next up we have an awesome shot, a truly glorious shot, and it's our I think only shot of Smaug. It is of course Smaug strafing Lake-town. Wow, it looks awesome. It looks wonderfully rendered. As we all know, Smaug is going to lay terrible waste to Lake-town, and that sequence I imagine is going to be very early on in the film and is going to be awesome. Not too much to say, he's burning the wooden shanty town to cinders. Quite interesting, of course, to see quite how Bard takes him down. It will be Bard, of course it will be Bard. Stop worrying that's going to be Tauriel standing on the shoulders of Legolas, you know, swinging through the air to kill Smaug. It will be Bard. The only interesting thing, of course, is whether he does it with the bow and arrow. They've obviously set up in Desolation of Smaug the whole wind lance thing, and my theory, my gut theory, and we'll see if I'm massively wider than Mark, as Bard won't be, but come December. But I think it's kind of there as a false red herring. So I think maybe Bard will be trying to launch that. The whole point of the wind lance is that it could break the dragon's scale, and it's done that now. You know, that scale's gone. Smaug's got that weak spot. So I think Bard's going to try and get to it, and Smaug's going to destroy it, and then Bard's going to end up on the rooftops with his bow and arrow shooting him. Remember, he is Bard the bowman. In the first poster that was released, he's standing there facing down Smaug with a bow. I think it's a bow and arrow. Would I mind if it's the wind lance? Probably not. It's more realistic. Let's face it. A huge, great ballista shot taking down a dragon is more realistic than one arrow. But I think they'll go for the visuals. You know, PJ changes a lot of stuff. In my mind, certainly for the better, largely. But I think the major story beats he doesn't change. If you go back and look at him, his stuff is more about character development than he tends to change. The main beats of how and when people die, generally speaking, don't change. So I think we're going to see Bard standing on a rooftop, drawing his bow back and shooting down Smaug, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, this sequence looks awesome. It's going to be a cracking start to the movie, I imagine. And yeah, I can't wait to see it. So next up, we've got a really cool shot. This is, of course, Legolas and Tauriel looking over what must be a kind of Lake-town refugee camp, while Lake-town burns in the background. So there's this shot, and there's one a bit later on with Legolas and Bard, where these are clearly taken from the same place as the still that was released middle of 2013 for Desolation of Smaug, where we had Bard and Legolas talking in a field with some Lake-towners behind them. This is clearly from that sequence. What's quite interesting, of course, about this is that Legolas is back. So remember, the film ends with Tauriel in Lake-town, but Legolas has ridden off to chase Bolg. So at some point, Legolas needs to stop that pursuit and get back relatively early on. You'll also notice he's got no arrows in his quiver. So is that because he helped out in the Lake-town battle, or is that because it's left over from him fighting Bolg? Be interesting to go and see the end of Desolation of Smaug and find out if he's got arrows at the end of that. In fact, why don't we do that? Okay, so I've had a look, and wouldn't you know it, there's actually a continuity error. So in the scene with Bolg, at various points he has no arrows in his quiver and he has some arrows in his quiver. So in the very last shot, that you can see his quiver properly, he does have arrows in it. So that would imply, assuming that it's not just a continuity error, that he's been firing arrows at some point after his Bolg attack, his fight with Bolg, after the events of the Desolation of Smaug, and before this scene at Lake-town. So that's possibly quite interesting, or possibly just a continuity error. But hey, there's the sort of things us massive nerds look for, right? So yeah, it's really cool to see this sort of sequence. The elves are now talking, obviously talking with the men. Perhaps they're part of the reason that Thranduil ends up getting drawn in. I've got a different possibility for that myself. But at this stage, you've got to wonder, what are Legolas and Tauriel now going to do? Yeah, beyond possibly going back to get Thranduil. So that'll be interesting to play out. But it looks great. I really like the look of this scene. Also good that they've, I think clearly in the same way that PJ built up the women and children at Helm's Deep to give it a human element, I think clearly the strife of the refugees of Lake-town is going to be a kind of major part of the first third of the last film. So next up, a very similar shot. We saw this in the trailer for the trailer, which is the refugees from Lake-town leaving the burning wreck and moving over the mountain. This just looks awesome. Again, it looks absolutely glorious. Really like this. And it's very, it reminds me a lot of the scene in the Two Towers with the refugees leaving Erebor. So that's really great. Obviously this is happening just slightly before the shot we've just seen, and is them on their way to wherever that encampment is. Okay, so next up we move inside Erebor, and this is pretty cool. We've got 4 dwarfs running down the stairs. Who are they? I don't know. I think it's really hard to tell, but I do have a theory that I will expand on later when we get to the shot, that for my money that is Fili, Kili, Oin and Bofa, and I think that's them returning from Lake-town. They're in travelling gear, I think, rather than their armour. It's really hard to tell in this shot. Their body shapes look roughly like it could be those 4, and I think that's what that is. I think they've just arrived and they're meeting up with the other dwarfs. But of course it's just a theory, it could be any of the 4 of them. But cool to see. Okay, so next up we have a kind of interesting shot here of, at the very least, Kili and Ori. Those are Ori's mittens. Lifting some kind of statue. So first off, this means that 100%, and there's a few shots to confirm this, as if it was ever in doubt, Kili, Fili, Bofa and Oin do join up with the other guys. So that at some point after the film, I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out, but at some point those 4 dwarfs are going to get from Lake-town to Erebor. I also reckon, my theory is that they're going to bring news of Smaug's death to Erebor. You remember in the book, it's the raven, isn't it? I can't remember if it's the raven or the thrush. Let's find out. It's the raven. Yep, the thrush comes back from Lake-town and goes like, and they're all like, I don't know what you're saying, you're a bird, we can't talk to birds except ravens. So the thrush goes off, finds a raven, the raven comes back and tells them Smaug's dead, and they're all like, hooray! So yeah, that's how you find it in the book, but that's been gone for the film, probably wisely, I think. Yeah, we've got all sorts of talking animals in the Hobbit book, which I think PJ has quite wisely excised. So I don't think we're going to get the kind of raven telling them. So somehow the dwarfs in Erebor have got to find out that Smaug dies. And my bet is these 4 dwarfs from Lake-town come back and tell them that. So yeah, they're picking up a giant stone statue. And they're in their army. You can see Keely's all armoured up. My guess is this is them barricading the gate. There's all the talk in the book of where they barricade the front gate so that no one can get into Erebor. And I reckon they're kind of doing that. They're moving the statues. It looks to me like it's outside, but then who knows all the colour grading that goes on. As for what it is, it's not big enough to be the statue of Thrall that's outside the secret door. Could it be the head of one of the big dwarfs at either side of the gates of Erebor? It looks a bit small to me. Who knows? But I think it's just a piece of kind of rubble that they're using to build up their kind of defensive wall. It's quite cool. I like it a lot. Next up we have Bard's Head. He's in Dale. It's Bard's Head. Even me, I can't get much more out of it than that. He looks good. He looks serious. Bard's Head. Next up we have Thranduil wandering around the ruins of Dale. This is kind of interesting because obviously a lot of people have been excited about how fabulous he looks in his armour. Will we get a new profile for Thranduil? My guess would be, I was thinking about this a lot last night, my guess would be that we won't get a whole new profile, but he will have the war gear option to take heavy armour potentially. Although of course in SBG quite exactly what armour means is different, so maybe Defense 5 actually reflects that armour, who knows. But heavy armour on Thranduil would be nice, but I don't think he'll get, some people are talking about a 3 attack 3 wound profile. I don't think we'll see that. What is interesting I was thinking about is presumably the dwarves will all have their armour options, and who knows what GW are going to do in terms of a source book. You know, fingers crossed they do something at the very least, but I think they'd be very unlikely to reprint all those profiles from An Unexpected Journey just to give them extra armour. So my bet, you heard it here first, might be that there'll be an army list, there'll be kind of Thorin's Company, it'll be an updated Thorin's Company army list essentially, and it will just say all of them can take armour, heavy armour for +5 points, and it increases all of the defence by 1. So I reckon that might be it. Rather than reprinting everything, use the original profiles, but they all have an option to increase their armour, which would be amazing. Defense 9 Thorin, oh, brilliant. Defense 7 Dwalin. Oh. So that's my bet for that. I think that's the most sensible thing, but who knows? It's fun thinking about that. So yeah, we've got Thranduil walking through Dale. This is obviously after some form of fight. You can see that I've made out at least one dead elf and one, I think it's a dead man, and there's 2 dead elves, aren't there? There's another one on the steps. There's 2 dead elves and 1 dead man. So this is after some form of conflict. Possibly near the end of the film. Is this after the whole Battle of 5 Armies? Or are there going to be a couple of skirmishes first? It's really hard to tell. That's one of the things I'm most excited about, quite seeing how the kind of geography and the timeline of this battle plays out. It's very much up in the air for how PJ develops that, so I'm quite keen to see it. But it looks cool. Thranduil looks like he's probably, this is probably after that scene that we see later on where he's fighting the orcs. That looks pretty cool. Next up we have feet. Amazing! Feet that clearly belong to Bilbo after he's waxed. Now, these of course are Galadriel's feet. Again, like Bard's Head, there's only so much you can say. It's Galadriel's feet. She's probably in Dol Guldur, and it probably relates to this shot of Galadriel kissing Gandalf on the head, which is fine. Don't freak out. Yeah, it's just a kiss on the head. She does it in Fellowship of the Ring, doesn't she? I'm sure she kisses someone. She kissed Frodo on the head, I think. Yeah, she just likes kissing heads. Don't worry about it, alright? It's not a love triangle. People are so obsessed with all the love triangles in there. And like Desolation of Smaug, oh, you know that bit where Keely and Tauriel fall in love? They don't fall in love. It's like Keely's got a crush on her. Oh, a dwarf. Oh, falling in love with an elf. Oh, it's terrible. Tolkien would be turning it in his grave. It's not like he wrote it in Lord of the Rings. Gimli falls in love with Galadriel. It's the same. Yeah, Tauriel's not in love with Keely. She's kind of, Tauriel's a young, naive elf who's excited by outside cultures and wants to get to know them, right? I'll take this all back if Keely and Tauriel start making out in the 3rd film, but as of yet it's not been a love story, it's just companionship, to probably make it all the worse when they both die in the 3rd film. But same with this, this is clearly, I reckon, after Galadriel has just gone mental at Sauron. Gandalf's obviously been knocked out, probably where she finds him in her in his cage. There's this scroll thing. Do you remember those the posters they've done for the first two films, the long thin posters? There's one of those for the third film out in which Gandalf's lying on his back on some stairs and Galadriel's reaching out for him. Very similar sort of thing here. I think Galadriel's going to turn up at Radagast has gone off to get Galadriel. Galadriel's going to turn up probably with Elrond and Saruman, we think. We've seen some stuff with Elrond. Christopher Lee said Saruman was in this one a lot more. I'm not sure how much of that is him being a bit Christopher Lee, to be honest, but they might well be there. And then they're going to somehow drive Sauron out with some whizzy magical power, which is going to be awesome. I'm very excited to see how that works. I've also got a theory that it will be Galadriel that convinces Thranduil to go to Erebor. If you bear in mind, in the film, Thranduil's incredibly isolationist. In the books, Thranduil just goes to help out the men of Lake-town because he's their friend, which isn't going to work based in mind the characterisation we've seen so far. So there'll need to be something that drives Thranduil to go to that battle. And possibly he'll be after his son, possibly worried about Legolas, I'm not sure. But I think it'll be Galadriel, who would be someone that Thranduil respects, who will kind of suggest him and convince him to take his army to the Battle of Five Armies. That's my bet. Who knows if that'll be right. But I think that that scene's going to be awesome, and we might finally in the game see Galadriel get the banishment spell that's we've been waiting for someone to have for the last year and a half at the moment. So that would be pretty cool. She'll hopefully revive Gandalf, put him on the horse, he rides off to Erebor in the scene we saw earlier. That's my thinking. How much will Saruman do? A lot of people were saying they can't wait to see Sauron in action. Bear in mind, Christopher Lee wasn't in New Zealand. He did all of his stuff for the Council of Elrond scene in England on green screen. So I'm just a bit wary about quite how much Christopher Lee's going to be running around blasting things, bearing in mind that he would have had to do it entirely separate to everyone else. He said in that Christmas message that he's in it, and he's in it a lot, but I just think maybe he was exaggerating that somehow, possibly. I just don't see there being a lot of time for a lot of Saruman in there. Perhaps people have talked about possibly seeing some of his fall, some of his temptations, and maybe his rule will be more spoken. Maybe there'll be a scene where Radagast approaches the White Council at the start of the film, and Saruman sends Galadriel and Elrond off to help Gandalf, but doesn't go himself. Who knows? Either way, I think that's going to be so cool. That whole sequence is going to be brilliant, and I only wish we'd seen a bit more of it in the trailer. Next up, we're inside Erebor. This is pretty cool. Now, it's quite hard to make out exactly who the dwarfs are, but I feel pretty confident of saying there's 5 up on the kind of standing up on that balcony, and then there's 1 down in the gold, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be Thorin. It's going to be the other 5 staring at Thorin as he goes a bit mad as the gold takes hold of him, probably. Can't know for sure, but it looks pretty cool, and we know that I'm sure inside Erebor there's going to be an awful lot of kind of cool character stuff in the first half of the film, with Thorin going a little mad and ostracising the dwarfs. I'm sure there was a scene at one point where Bofa, I think it's James Nesbitt, says something that Bofa has to make a choice between his friends and his loyalty, as it were, or something like that. His king and his conscience, something like that. So I think maybe Bofa might actually be involved in helping Bilbo escape with the Arkenstone. Who knows? But, yeah, it's quite cool. It looks great. I can't wait to see it. Like so much of these, most of these shots end with me saying I can't wait to see them. Next up, we've got Thorin again, probably linked to the previous scene. He's looking like he's going a little bit crazy. Yeah, the dragon sickness is really going to take its hold on him in this film, and we'll certainly see the fall of Thorin, I'm sure, before we see the redemption right at the end of the film. Next up, we have an awesome shot of the dwarfs in full-on battle armour. It starts off, the one you've just missed, just before I screen grab this, it's Fili, then you can see Keely clearly, then it's Bofa, and I can't really make out the others. What's interesting about this is you've got Thorin watching them, and it very much, and Bilbo's obviously there. He's wearing his mithril shirt. You can see the shoulder of the mithril shirt through his shirt, so he has been given that at this stage. It obviously looks like they're going off to the Battle of Five Armies with Thorin watching over them. They look amazing. Again, fingers crossed for armour for the Thorin's company, and a new set of models of them dressed like this. That would be amazing. 13 Dwarfs took me a long time to paint. I think on and off it took me about 3-4 months to paint my Thorin's company, but I would be so up for doing them again if we get them in new armour with new profiles. But what's really interesting about this shot for me is look at Keely's breastplate. Keely has got a big, solid, thick breastplate on, and later on he hasn't got that on. So either he gets smacked about a bit, as we know he will, and it comes off, or this isn't actually what they wear going out to the battle. I'll draw your attention to it a few more times as we go on, but it's interesting that he's definitely armed differently. So is this them getting ready to go for the Battle of Five Armies? I'm not sure. It certainly looks that way, but the arm thing's interesting. Next up, we have another shot from the refugee camp. This is almost certainly going to be the same conversation where we saw that still I talked about earlier, where that was taken from. Bard talking to Legolas. Who knows, maybe does Legolas sees the destruction, maybe Bard convinces him to send help to his father, to Thranduil for help. Really hard to tell exactly what's going on, but that's clearly where that is, first half of the film, I reckon. And next up we've got two shots which are really really quite linked. First up we've got Bard in front of the elf army. See that big series of arches in the background? That's the same series of arches that were there when we saw Gandalf ride in to Dale earlier in the trailer. So this is clearly, that big open square is clearly where a lot of stuff's going to happen. That's obviously the centre of the set, I guess. And maybe that's where the good armies are kind of going to gather. But we have this whole elf army and they look amazing. So these are very similar, if not identical, to the armoured elves we saw at the start of Unexpected Journey, which a lot of people have wanted to see. They're not Palace Guard and they're not Mirkwood Rangers. So fingers crossed we might get some new armoured elves, and fingers crossed that they'll be in plastic, although, you know, things don't particularly bode well for them being plastic if you look at the recent releases, but who knows, maybe we'll get some plastic armoured elves, which will be cool. And then the next shot, they all kind of spin around, almost to let Bard pass through. Some people have speculated this is because he's in charge of the elf army. I don't think that's the case. I think this is a mark of respect because he just killed the dragon with a bow. I think that's what it is. I think the elves are kind of honouring him, as it were. He's still in his Lake-town gear. He's not in the kind of blue outfit he wears later on for the battle. So this must be relatively early on. Presumably, this kind of reminds me when the elves turn up at Helm's Deep. I think this is the elves turning up at Dale to help Bard out. Possibly help him retake Erebor. That's what they would be doing at that stage, because of what he achieved with the dragon, because of how he rid the world of Smaug. But who knows? It's cool anyway. It's great to see a kind of elf army. Next up, it's another shot's hard to see a lot from. We've got Bilbo. Big close up of Bilbo's face. Stuff going on behind him. He's got mud and possibly blood on his face. It looks a lot like it's in a battle. Again, it looks like the ruins of Dale. Snow's coming down. He looks very sad, very upset. Maybe this is him. Maybe this is a reaction shot when he sees someone he cares about dying. Who knows? But yeah, Bilbo looking to be in the thick of it. You'll also note in that shot he is wearing his mithril coat. So we can be absolutely certain he'll get the mithril coat, which will make his young Bilbo's profile even better. Assuming, touch wood, assuming that GW do update the profiles, then having good Bilbo immune to the effects of the ring with the mithril coat will be awesome, because I love me a bit of Bilbo. It'd be cool to get a Bilbo in that outfit as well, actually. His little blue Lake-town outfit, that'd be good fun. So yeah, there we go. Next up, oh yeah, of course, we have the ram chariot battle wagon thing. This looks cool. I'm a big fan of this. Obviously so not in the books, but we appear to have, and it is entirely speculative, it looks to me Balin at the top of the steps, because he's white hair in a red jacket. You see a bald head near the front driving it, or possibly operating what looks like some kind of repeating ballista thing, which is going to be Dwalin. Makes sense for Balin and Dwalin to be together. and then there's two other dwarfs on it, one on each side. The one on the left is holding a bow. So Smart Money says that's Keely, then the one on the right would be Feely. That kind of makes sense. Looking at the one on the right, he does kind of seem to have the shoulder pads that Keely has on. So that's my bet. Alright, you heard it here first on, where are we? The 30th of July. I think it's Dwalin, Balin, Feely and Keely in that. You'll also notice that they are armoured up. So it's quite interesting to think if this is part of the battle, or is it perhaps, and here's my theory, it fits with the armour thing, this is earlier on. I think maybe Thorin is watching them when the dwarves go past, Feely and Keely definitely go past, and they are sending out a sortie. You notice in this shot, Dale is in the background of this, okay? So they are driving towards Dale, away from the mountain. If we go on to the next shot as well, you'll see the same thing. You now see that Erebor is in the background, so the chariot is driving away from Erebor. I think maybe, bearing in mind that again we have no talking thrushes, no talking ravens, I think these four are going off to tell Dane to come for help. That's my theory. That these guys are going to ride off and attack Dane. Attack Dane? That would be a bad idea. And kind of get Dane and send for help, because otherwise I'm not quite sure how Dane's going to get the message to turn up at the battle. There are of course two wargs suddenly now chasing them to attack them, so I could be well off. Maybe this is part of the battle. Maybe maybe the dwarfs ride out into the battle in a selection of these. That'd be kind of cool. But you know, they get the rams from the mountains around the place and ride out. It could work. I don't know, but it's cool. It's visually different as well, which is nice. And of course, everyone, all us lot, are mainly excited because is there going to be a model? Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, this has been long planned. But I said this on the forum somewhere. Now the Perrys have been released from their sculpting contract with GW. I just hope they're not sitting at home watching this trailer going, "Wow, that CGI battle wagon is amazing. I wish we'd had a chance to sculpt that." So, fingers crossed, we're going to get an awesome kind of chariot battle wagon pulled by 6 rams or whatever it is, with 4 hero dwarfs on the back of it. That would be kind of amazing. And who knows, quite a role that I'll have to play in the film, but I think it looks good. I'm all up for changes, diverging from the book. I think it makes the film exciting, it makes it different, and I can't wait to see what they do with that. Next up we have Bard. Anyone who's read the book will be fairly confident about knowing where the scene is. He looks to me, by the way, his shoulders are that he's sitting on a horse. Dale is in the background. He's talking to Thorin. He says, "Will you have peace or war?" He's speaking to Thorin. It's part of the siege, part of the negotiations. He's going, you know, Bard's doing this bit where he goes, "Hi, you know how I brought you in and saved you and clothed you and gave you weapons and then helped you and then killed the dragon and gave your treasure back to you? Could I have some help for my burned city?" And Thorin quite reasonably goes, "No," like a jerk. And Bard's all like, "What are you doing, man?" You know. So that's clearly that scene, I think. And he's just looking a bit annoyed, going, "Come on, you know, give us a fiver or something, please." And of course we go on to the next shot, which is Thorin going, "I will have war," which is of course perfectly reasonable. You can notice that Keely behind him looks a bit baffled. He's going, "What are you talking about? Give him some money." Yeah, quite reasonably. But Thorin by this point has clearly gone a bit too lally, and I think they're probably going to play that up. It is there in the book, but I think they'll probably make more of it in the film, that Thorin kind of maybe loses the confidence of the dwarf slightly and kind of becomes more and more ostracised. What's very interesting about this is that look at his crown. Have we seen that before? Oh yes, that is of course Thror's crown. Now, that isn't just me kind of thinking it looks a bit like Thror's crown. I'll see if I can screen grab it from The Unexpected Journey, but there's some really, really clear shots of Thror's crown, and that is very much the crown. Of course, what's interesting about that is Thror gets beheaded by Azog after they leave Erebor, and Thorin certainly hasn't been carrying the crown all this time, so how does Thorin get the crown of Thror? There's a possibility there's a spare, I suppose. There's another one in there, but that doesn't seem particularly crowny to me. You have a crown, don't you, that you pass on. You don't have multiples. You don't have one for Wednesday when the other one's in the wash or something. So it'd be interesting to see quite how he gets that. I'm absolutely certain it won't be a continuity error, as some have suggested. I don't think he'll just find it and put it on. There'll be some explanation of quite how he's got that back. But he's clearly taken up that mantle of the King Under the Mountain, which is, I think, really great to see. I think he looks awesome in that gear, and that's probably how we're going to see him fighting at the Battle of Five Armies, which should be very cool. Next up, we've got a scene probably not long before the shot of Thranduil we saw earlier, of Thranduil just looking awesome in Dale. He's fighting with 2 swords, which would be really cool. Again, is there potential to change his profile a bit, to make him a bit of combat beast? I'd say probably not. You know, he's fighting with 2 elven blades instead of 1 elven blade in his profile, but you know, look at Legolas. Look at what Legolas does, not even just in the Hobbit films, but in the Lord of the Rings. You know, according to the films, he should have 2 attacks. Sorry, 2 attacks? He's got 2 attacks in the book, in the game. According to the films, he should probably have about 17 attacks, you know. But the profiles don't necessarily match the performance on screen. So my guess is we're going to see Thranduil looking awesome and doing all sorts of stuff, but you probably won't see a change in his profile. But he looks cool, he's in his armour again, and he's cutting through what look like Gundabad orcs. Here's hoping for some plastics, but who knows. Next up we have Legolas, who looks furious. Notice his quivers are out of arrows, so this is clearly at some point in the battle. What might happen in the battle that would make Legolas absolutely furious? Who knows? Maybe this is after Tauriel has just been taken down. Of course, that's me making wild accusations. Maybe he just saw the, I don't know, cost of petrol in Middle-earth or something. He just looks a bit annoyed. Legolas is somewhat known for looking a bit annoyed, so I wouldn't read too much into it, but it does look like that kind of reaction. It looks a bit like his reaction in Return of the King when Aragorn gets knocked down by the troll and he's trying to get through to him. It looks kind of like that. So maybe something bad has just gone down for the elves. We'll wait and see. Next up we have the rampaging cart, which is quite exciting. What has been made pretty clear is that the person in the cart is Bard. Does this mean that Bard will have a new mount in the game, a kind of cart mount? No, of course it doesn't. But he's now in his different gear. He's in his kind of blue cloak, which I really hope has armour over it to make him at the very least defense 5, please. And he's wielding a sword, so this is obviously part of the main battle. Again, it's set in Dale, so obviously a hell of a lot of this battle is going to be in Dale. And it bounces over a couple of people. And if we pause it at the right time, you can clearly see that that is almost certainly Bane and, is it Sigrid, I believe, the elder daughter. So his children are under threat and Bard comes charging down some steps in a cart and leaps over them, and thankfully doesn't run them into the ground. So that's what that is, and it's pretty cool. And again, it's just a sign of kind of how dynamic I guess PJ's trying to make the battle. We'll talk about more of this with the infamous Ram cavalry when they come up, but all the battles so far we've seen in Middle-earth, particularly the big ones, Helm's Deep and Pelennfields, they have a selection of different stuff going on. They normally start, you know, there's a start with a siege, you have all the kind of escalade stuff and battering ram stuff, and then there's a cavalry charge, and then there's a kind of infantry fight in the middle. The Battle of Five Armies, as it is in the book, is largely just a big scrap in a field. Yeah, I know you have other things arriving, like the eagles coming in, and there's some got orcs up on the mountain shooting bows and all that sort of stuff, but the main combatants are all on foot, and they're all just scrapping in the middle of a field. So my bet is part of the reason they've set it in Dale is to kind of change the geography up a bit and make the battle a little more visually interesting, which I'm really up for. I think it looks great, it looks really interesting, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Next up we have Keely. Now Keely at the moment is he's now Son's breastplate. Yeah, so the breastplate we saw earlier on, he doesn't have anymore. Why? I don't know, it's hard to say. It looks like he's kind of at the top of some sort of mountain or some sort of tower or stuff. There's some shots of Bolg and Bilbo in a minute that look like they might be in the same sort of place. But for now, yeah, what matters is his armour has definitely in some way been affected. The breastplate's come off, has been knocked off, has he chosen to take it off, I don't know, but us nerds should care about such things, as it may well be significant. Next up, we have another shot from the trailer for the trailer. It just looks awesome. It's clearly just Azog leading the army down, like the army of Gundabads towards Erebor. I had a funny feeling, I was having a look at this, that you can see in the middle, basically in the middle, I think there's some bigger stuff. I don't know what it is, but it looks like there's some things moving which are bigger, possibly trolls or mounts or something, I'm not sure. But again, it wouldn't surprise me to see the film team kind of give you some variety in the evil troops to make some of the battle more interesting and make some big things for the heroes to kill. Bear in mind, in a way that we never even had in Return of the King, the Battle of Five Armies is going to be absolutely a battle of heroes. Yeah, you've got like 13 dwarves, Gandalf, Bard, Tauriel, Legolas, Tauriel, all these guys fighting out. A Dane, of course. All these guys fighting out, and they've all got to have their own little hero moments. So there's got to be lots and lots of stuff for the heroes to do. But it looks awesome. Looks great. Really cool shot. This is the shot I was talking about earlier with Bolg, and this to me looks like he could possibly be in the same place as Keely is in the shot. Quite similar, you know. They both look quite high up. This shot actually looks almost, there's almost like fire in the background, which is interesting. Almost like it's a volcano. Some sort of volcano or something. I did wonder at one point if this possibly could be in Dol Guldur, but I don't, you know, it could well be. Does Bolg go back? He's on his warg, does he ride back to Dol Guldur and take part in the siege there before coming to, before coming out to the Battle of Five Armies? Who knows, maybe he goes back to Dol Guldur and dies there. Maybe he doesn't make it to the Battle of Five Armies. I'm not sure. I'll just compare it to the next shot, just out of interest, which of course is Bilbo. And Bilbo, again, if you look in the background, that looks kind of like a city. That still very much looks to me like Dale, like the ruins of Dale in the background there. And of course, the way this is intended is you're meant to think it's Bolg walking towards Bilbo, and it could well be. But bear in mind, it could equally be Bolg walking to someone else and Bilbo reacting to something else entirely. So we don't know. They did this in the Desolation of Smaug trailer, where they had the line with Thranduil saying, I offer you my help, and then Dwalin in the boat says to Thorin, can we trust him? Oh, how do we know we can trust him? And Thorin goes, we can't. And you know, the implication there is that they can't trust Thranduil in the trailer, but of course anyone who knew anything knew that they're in the boat, so they were almost certainly talking about Bard, which they are in the film. So it could be a similar thing here. You know, you could be going, oh my god, Bolg and Bilbo are going to have some form of showdown, which, if you know anything about my recent game with Tom Robertson, Bilbo would win. But equally, this could be an entirely separate scene. But I think it's likely to be quite climactic. I think Keely in that shot is probably here. Maybe Bolg takes down Keely. Because that's the kind of cool thing. If you went purely by the book, it's very simple, isn't it? Bolg kills Thorin, Beorn kills Bolg. And Fili and Keely just get killed by generic orcs, I believe. Just they're cut down defending Thorin's body. But now, because we've got Azog as well, and the enmity is between Azog and Thorin, it's probably going to be Azog that kills Thorin, isn't it? And then, but surely Thorin will kill Azog to get his ultimate revenge. It might be a kind of they both go down the same duel. And then does Beorn kill Bolg still, or does Tauriel? You know, they set up a bit of a rivalry between Bolg and Legolas. So does Legolas take Bolg down in the end? You know, I'm sure a lot of fans wouldn't like that, but who knows? Maybe Bolg kills Tauriel, Legolas takes him down. Who kills Fili and Keely? It's quite cool. And there's a lot to think about. I'm really, really interested to see how that plays out, because it's going to be, for anyone who doesn't know, hasn't read the book and doesn't know the end of the story, it's going to be amazing. It's like Fili, Keely and Thorin all die. And this is, you know, forgetting about what might happen to Tauriel and what might happen to Radagast. Fili, Keely and Thorin. Imagine if in Return of the King, Legolas, Gimli and Aragorn all died. Yeah? You wouldn't expect it, would you? So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of, it's going to have to be brave filmmaking, you know, PJ won't change that, the three of them will die, but it's going to be very interesting to see a kind of casual fan's reactions to that after getting to know these characters. 3 movies, seeing them all go down. It should make for a really cool end to the film. And so then we get to the infamous ram cavalry. So these look very much to be dwarfs on here. The smart money says this is Dane's army. There was the longest talk for ages about Dane arriving on a pig. That came from Billy Connolly himself. And people were up in arms about this. Oh, because the entire army will be mounted on pigs, even though no one ever said that at all, ever. And that's absolutely terrible, because dwarfs can't ride pigs. And now they're not riding pigs, they're riding rams, which, to be brutally honest, looking at, I think looks kind of cool. But a lot of people disagree. A lot of people think, no, the rams, dwarfs can't ride cavalry. Dwarfs on mounts? Oh, that is so un-Tolkien. Dwarfs, cavalry, oh, terrible. It's not like the entire company ride ponies throughout the entire book. Indeed. So yeah, the idea that dwarfs don't ride anything is not true. They're constantly riding things in the books. And I think these look pretty cool. I wasn't massively opposed to boar riders, to be honest, but the ram riders look quite cool. They look angry, and why not? Why not? I don't get it. I've said this on a bunch of forums. Anyone who's... I keep defending this decision. Everyone's fine with goblins riding wargs, so fictional goblins riding fictional big wolves is fine, but fictional dwarfs riding fictional rams is not fine. I don't know. I don't get why that is. So yeah, some people are up in arms about this. You know, they're saying, oh, it's so silly, it's so ridiculous. This isn't the Hobbit. This wasn't in the book. It's just, oh, it's so un-Tolkien. So un-Tolkien, so silly. Let's read some of the Hobbit, shall we? Let's have some story time. Story time with Damien. This is from the roast mutton chapter, as Bilbo's trying to pick their pockets. Ha! He thought, warming to his new work as he lifted it, this is the purse, carefully out. This is a beginning. It was. Trolls' purses are the mischief, and this was no exception. "Here, who are you?" it squeaked as it left the pocket. That's the purse talking. And William turned around once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could duck behind the tree. Okay? So just to confirm, in the book, the troll's purse catches Bilbo. The purse. Yeah? Okay. From this book that isn't silly. We'll now change to the Beorn chapter, where they go into his house. So they go into the house, and then ba ba ba. So there is precedence for sheep was heard, and in came snow white sheep led by a large coal black ram. One bore a white cloth. One of the sheep bore a white cloth, embroidered at the edges with figures of animals. Others bore on their broad backs trays with bowls and platters and knives and wooden spoons, which the dogs took and quickly laid on the trestle tables. This book, which can't have dwarfs on rams in it, because that's silly, has got dogs standing on their hind legs laying the table. Alright? Let's just give it a chance. Okay? This is not un-Tolkien. It's not crazy, it's not insane. It might work, it might not, but let's see how it looks. Everyone moaned about the rabbit sled to begin with, and a lot of people now like that. I think this will probably look fantastic on the screen. It's also likely, again, same as the Dale, I think they've probably done it to beef up to change the visual look of the battle. So we've got some cavalry appearing as well, which will change the kind of speed of the battle as opposed to just a massive infantry slog. I like it, and potentially incredibly cool models. Again, you have to hope they're in plastic. Fingers crossed they'll be plastic. But imagine them. You got to hope again the Perrys aren't going, God, we would have liked to sculpt them as well. But they could be really, really great. Love to see some dwarf cavalry, and I think they'll look great in the films. So fingers crossed. And then we have a bard leading the charge, of course. He's now, he's obviously bearing his sword, which I heard someone say is the sword of Girion. I'm not sure we've got any close-ups of Girion's sword from earlier in the films to compare it, but it's probably likely that he's got that same sword. He's his blue gear and his armour, and he's leading some men. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is at least one of these is a Lake-town guard. If you have a look there, that outfit, that blue outfit with the kind of metal armour thing there, that's the Lake-town guard outfit. So clearly, after the battle, Bard does take them over, because they were very much... The interesting discussion has been where the man army is going to come from in this film, because in the book in the book, Bard's the captain of the archers, and he's the captain of the guard or something, and Lake-town has an army, whereas in the film, Lake-town seems to have a bunch of bullies in employ of the master. So it was always going to be interesting where these men come from. And so it seems that Bard is going to rally the men of Lake-town to lead. So they're probably going to be more like a kind of militia army, I guess. Who knows, maybe they'll also draw on some men from surrounding settlements, perhaps. We don't know. But we can see that at least he's going to have the Lake-town guard fighting for him. Really interesting thing for me about this is quite where the Master and Alfred are going to fit into it. We've seen a shot of Alfred running into Dale, which suggests he survives Lake-town's attack. But does the Master? What happens to the Master and Alfred in? They vanish off in the Hobbit, don't they? The Master just wanders off or something, I believe. Let's find out. Yeah, so in the book, the Master is quite a supporter of Bard, and he does survive to the last of the Battle of Five Armies, and then Bard gives him some of the money that he gets from the Lonely Mountain, and the Master legs it. He does the kind of dragon sickness, which he already has the rule for in SBG, and he dies of starvation in the waste. So who knows? I would be surprised if that happened in the film. I'm surprised if they kept him around to then show him kind of run off. I think it's more likely he'll have some kind of death brought on by greed. So I reckon probably maybe Smaug will be attacking, he'll be desperately trying to get some gold together, maybe someone tries to get him out and goes, "We've got to go," and he goes, "No, I stay," and then the house collapses on him or something like that. You heard it here first. So that's my bet personally for that the Master won't be around for the battle. And it's just good for the film, from a filmmaking point of view, to get rid of these characters, isn't it? It's going to clear the slate a bit. So that'll be interesting to see. And then next up we have the Eye of Sauron, which of course is what it is. We saw it appear in the Desolation of Smaug. It's bound to come up at some part of the Dol Guldur scene as they drive him out, but that'll be interesting to see. This shot here of 4 dwarfs running into Erebor is what first drew me to the conclusion about the 4 dwarfs running down the stairs from earlier on, that this, I think, is Fili, Kili, Bofa and Oin running back into Erebor after Lake-town. There's 4 dwarfs, they're running into Erebor, they're in their travelling gear. It makes a lot of sense to me that once Lake-town's attacked, these 4 dwarfs somehow, do they escape, do they get sent back maybe to ask Thorin for aid? That would make a lot of sense. Bard would, these guys are clearly on the side of Bard and Tauriel now, having just saved Kili. So maybe Thorin, maybe they get sent back to the mountain to ask for Thorin to send money to help the Lake-towners, which would also explain Kili's kind of pained expression when Thorin says, "We will have war," because these dwarfs are probably very likely going to be sympathetic to the Lake-towners as they run in. We then get this rather cool shot of the elf archers lining up, and I think it's the next one. No, there is one in a minute, but we'll talk about both of them in a second. So then the next shot is this awesome shot of the company with Thorin uttering that immortal line, "Will you follow me one last time?" Probably as his last motivation for them to go out to the Battle of Five Armies. But again, it could happen at any point in the film. Who knows, he might not even be talking to the dwarfs. Yeah, he could be talking to anyone. But it's a cool line. And the only thing is, I feel bad for Bofa in this. You see Bofa, he's behind Oin and just next to Gloin. Sorry, not Oin, he's behind Ori and next to Gloin. And you can just see the outline of his hat. But he got kind of blocked in this shot. But it does look awesome. It does give you confirmation that all the dwarves come back to Erebor before the battle, which would be great. And they all look really, really great. And they look again very different. They're now not in their Lake-town travelling gear. They're all either completely armoured up or in new kind of dwarven attire, and I think they look really, really cool. So that will hopefully be before as he's trying to. It almost actually to me looks like they're standing against him. Like possibly they think he's gone too far, and they're going. They're kind of making a stand against him, and he's trying to convince them that he's doing the right thing. But who knows? And so then we come to the other shot of the elf archers, which was the one I mentioned that we'd talk about together. So we've now got Gandalf in front of the elf archers. They're all ready to fire. Notice that in the previous shot all the elves were drawn and ready to fire. In the book, they are about to fire on the dwarfs, and they actually they do loose at the dwarfs as the battle starts. You know, it says the arrows twanged or something, so they are about to fight, and this to me possibly looks like it could be that, with Gandalf coming between them to stop the elves and the dwarfs coming to blows. Equally, he could just be in front of the elves, and they could just be shooting at an army of orcs. Who knows? Notice that Gandalf now does have Radagast's staff. There's a talking point. There's an interesting little bit. We saw his original Hobbit staff get destroyed in Desolation of Smaug. There's been fairly persistent rumours for ages that he would get Radagast's staff. What would make a wizard give up his staff? Either, the safe money says, either Radagast has decided to abandon his calling and wandered off into the wilds, or he dared. We don't know. People say he can't die because he's in the Lord of the Rings. He's in the Lord of the Rings books. He's not in the Lord of the Rings films. He could die. Personally, again, I wouldn't have a huge problem with him dying. It's like Haldir. It's a different telling of the stories. If his sacrifice possibly saves Gandalf, it could be great. I hope he doesn't die. I think Sylvester McCoy makes a good Radagast, but he might die. But for some reason or other, Gandalf gets Radagast's staff, and that's kind of interesting. So yeah, obviously a huge army of elves going to be at the Battle of Five Armies. We then get Legolas and Tauriel on a rock, Legolas looking proper grumpy. Hard to say when this is. He's got arrows in his quiver. We can test everything by how many arrows Legolas has got. It looks either before the battle or after the battle, doesn't it? After the battle, Tauriel survives. Before the battle, who knows? But it looks like them kind of scouting, possibly, like they've gone on a... It looks again Dale-ish, like they're overlooking Erebor, perhaps. Maybe they're trying to work out what exactly Thorin's up to. But just kind of cool stuff. And then we get Bilbo looking confused and very concerned. Again, this shot looks like it will be early on in the film to me. They're outside, they're not armoured up. Bilbo doesn't look like he's wearing his mithril coat to me. So I think this is possibly them staring at the smoke coming up from Lake-town. You know, Bilbo ends the second film by saying, "What have we done?" And this is him staring out over the kind of smoke, still worried about that kind of thing. And that is that. That is the end of the trailer. The Hobbit, the Battle of Five Armies. Yeah, interesting stuff. Overall impressions, I loved it. I really, really loved the trailer. I got so excited. I've been waiting for ages for something. It was the end of July it came out. Last year we had the trailer for Desolation of Smaug on at the middle of June, so it's kind of 6 weeks later. But also by that point, PJ had done that fan event in March last year, where he talked about Desolation of Smaug a lot. He showed you a lot of behind the scenes footage, a lot of previous stuff, and a little scene. He showed the Radagast and Gandalf scene at the end. He also had production diaries from the pickup shooting, so there was a lot coming on. And I think because this year the production diaries would be a bit dull because they're just purely editorial, they're not filming anymore. There's not been any information till now, so it's kind of great to finally get something and get some idea about what the film will be like. I'm very excited about it. I'm very hopeful. As you've probably picked up throughout this, I'm a big fan of the first two Hobbit films. I think they're great. I don't mind changes at all. I think that this is here. I read this when I was 10, and after I've watched these films, that book will still be there. Having a film tell a different version of the story doesn't take away from the story itself. It just provides you with a different version. This isn't even Diet Coke, by the way. I hate the stuff. It's Pepsi, but I just filled up the bottle to, you know, keep the sponsorship stuff up. So, and keep Jamie happy. So yeah, there's my thoughts. As I said, who knows? I could be massively wrong about all of them, and I'm really excited to find out. 30th of July, we have 4.5 months to go. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, 4.5 months until we see it. There's going to be a full trailer in October, apparently. I can't wait to watch this video back after the film comes out and see how right and how wrong I was about it. But I'd love to hear what you think about this. So put comments below. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? What's going to happen? What do you think all these films are? be really interested to hear what you think and get a discussion going. So, as ever, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Support your Hobbit hobby, and happy strategy battle gaming.